Hello, and welcome to This Podcast Cannot Continue, a podcast about video games by two friends. It is episode 19, and we've kind of been away for a little bit. I kind of took some time to go somewhere else to visit some family. So we're back, and it's now late summer, and some stuff has happened in the video game world.
We're under heat warning where we live, and it's
sweaty.
It's not pleasant.
It's super not pleasant.
Yeah. There's a kind of a cycle here where it sort of cools down a little bit, couple days, and then it like slowly gets hot, and then it goes heat warning for a couple days, and it cools down again, and it's like this constant cycle all summer long.
Yep, pretty much. Nice to stay at home and play video games though when you're not dying of the heat.
I've been wanting to take the Switch outside or the 3DS outside and sit in a lawn chair in the backyard at like in the evening hours, like 7, 8, 9 p.m. maybe.
Yep.
But I haven't actually done it.
Ooh, you know what? Speaking of fun handhelds, I recently
got an IPS screen.
Did I tell you that? Yeah. Well, I didn't tell you.
No, a better frame. What was it again?
Yeah. So I've talked before on the show about my IPS screen Game Boy, but they've released a glass screen for it now that actually has the correct border that fits the slightly larger screen. So you see the whole screen. So I've ordered one of those, but then I thought it would be silly just to order one glass screen from the company. So I also ordered a whole kit to change one of my original Game Boy Pockets. I have a couple.
Do you know who made it? Like, what's the company called?
Ooh.
Just to shout them out if you have it handy.
Yeah, I believe I used the website Handheld Legend.
Okay.
Yeah, they have IPS screens for a bunch of things. So I got the Game Boy Pocket one because I love the Game Boy Pocket. It's my favorite profile for a Game Boy. It also has a very large screen already. So this puts an IPS screen in it. You can see in the dark. Game Boy Pocket, even with the IPS screen, only gets about 3 hours of battery life out of 2 AAAs. So I have rechargeable AAAs, so I'm kind of okay with 3 hours because I'm never going to play it for more than 3 hours at a time anyways. However, lots of people don't like doing the IPS screen thing on it because it just, sucks batteries dry so quickly.
I just considered, that's one big advantage that something like the Analog Pocket might have.
Longer battery life.
It depends. It's also driving a higher resolution screen, even though you're like running a lower resolution game still.
Yep.
I don't know if it's actually like literally the truth, but like in general, like every pixel is powered, right? So it's the
IPS screen's real clean on it. Like, it's nice.
Yeah.
And I got a glass for that. So what I did was I bought a matte black Game Boy Pocket shell and a white enlarged border glass screen and then white buttons. So it's kind of going to have like a black and white vibe.
That's cool.
And I'm going to take the hardware out of my original green Game Boy Pocket. I bought that a long time ago for like $14, and it's not in the greatest condition, but the hardware's like mint, like it works on the inside. So
yeah, a PCB is a PCB, right? So
yeah, and I'm not ruining anything. I'm not ruining anything either. I'm just going to take the ribbon cable off the thing, and there's very minimal editing needed to be done for this swap. So, and I also spent a little bit extra and got a case for it that is 3D printed already, so I don't have to modify the shell. I can actually it's made for the IPS screen. So it's actually going to be a very painless build, and I am very excited for it. Yeah, that's kind of my little bit of news. That's something that I've had kind of cooking. I'm excited for that to come up any week now. And yeah, what have you been doing these last couple of weeks?
Raiding.
Oh yeah. You're doing Ultimates, right?
Yeah. So this is Final Fantasy 14. If you've been watching the show for a while, you know that I play the hell out of that game. Finished up the Epic of Alexander like a month ago or something like that. Have been working on from Stormblood, the Weapons Refrain.
Yep.
Maybe we're like we've probably passed the halfway mark on that.
That's pretty quick.
Still have a casual group that I raid one of the Eden Savage fights with because they have not yet cleared it. I'm essentially helping them out. And lastly, also got a Blue Mage group together. and cleared some of the fights on that. So that's been a nice sort of work in progress as well.
Nice.
Yeah, just that game sort of became my like pandemic time filler, and now I think I'm just more passionate about it than I ever was. That pandemic aside, I want to push content.
I got to get back in there.
Difficult content as much as possible. Yeah.
I just resubbed, so I'm committed now.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know. I haven't really been doing a whole lot of, like you went and visited family. I kind of stayed in town and did my thing. But yeah, I guess the other game I've been playing, I wouldn't say a lot, certainly not the same kind of hours as 14, but I do play it usually daily, is Genshin Impact.
Oh yeah.
And I had like a kind of a bad experience, not necessarily bad, but I had a disappointing experience with one of the like temporary sort of events, which is that there was like an event in what was it? What were those islands called? There was the Golden Apple Archipelago or whatever. It was like this event over the summer that had a special area.
Okay.
And there was these like kind of like combat challenges, and I wasn't able to clear them. My characters were not particularly built. And I realized that essentially, like, I was playing the game very casually and neglecting some of the like stuff that is part of character progression.
Oh, okay.
In that game, and
did you hit the pay to win wall?
No, I just hit like essentially I hit a not using what I have available daily. Right. There's a resource you get daily called resin, and there's 160 of it you get to spend every day. That's just like it just like exists or whatever. That like recharges. And I just wasn't spending it at all. Like I would just like log in and do quests, and that's really it. And so my characters were not advancing, but my adventure rank was, as well as just the event. I think the event had fixed scaling. Adventure rank leads to world scaling, so my world was scaling and my characters weren't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. It's not so much that. It actually isn't really paywall related at all. The funny thing about Genshin and money is the stuff that you need to make the characters that you have better. Mm-hmm. Some of it can be paid for, but like you really don't need to do that unless you're literally trying. And remember that the game is played in a party of 4, and there might be times where you need 2 or 3 parties. But if you're trying to level like literally everybody in the game and like cap them all out, and you're trying to do it right away, right now, yeah, maybe you need to spend money. But like otherwise, investing in your characters in the sense of like leveling them up and their equipment and their artifacts and stuff isn't really what you can spend, like what people spend money on this game. When people spend a lot of money in this game, they spend a lot of money on this game on wishes, which is like, I want to get a new character or a new weapon or whatever, right? And so like the thing that is the expense of Genshin for the people that spend a lot of money on it is like there's a one-time banner. Well, not necessarily one time, because a lot of characters have come back around again like months later or whatever, but there's like a banner that's like a temporary amount of time, and it's like wish on that banner for the chance to get this character, and it's like available for like 21 days or something, right? So people spend a lot of money because they don't want to miss the character. But for me, my general philosophy has been not to like see the banner and want the character so badly that I get tempted, but instead to work with who I have. That makes sense. Just wish when I'm able to. Like literally whenever I get the currency to wish with that you can also earn. You don't have to buy it, you can also earn it. I just wish with what I've earned, literally when I can afford to do a wish. Every 160 Primo Gems is called. That I get from questing and stuff. I just wish right off the bat, like with literally no care about what result I get. And the characters I get are the ones I get. And I actually have some pretty good teams running as far as that goes. Like one of my main team DPSs is like an S on the tier list, and like I've built a team around her and it's working really well. So it's like, it's kind of interesting. Like without really spending money, I still have like a really viable team. Cool. I just needed to invest in my characters. So yeah, over the past couple of weeks, I spent a lot of time spending all my resin every day, as well as like I had a bunch of like item resin that you can like pop to like refill your resin that is like quest rewards that I had literally never used. So I had like a huge pile of it. So I just burned a whole ton of that and like set up a bunch of my characters way better. And I'm like way more capable now of taking on stuff at my world level and like event fights and stuff like that. So there was a minute there where I was like, I only want to play this game a little bit a day, and if my characters aren't built enough because I wasn't spending on my resin, like that's not how I want to play the game, I might quit it. But then I just kind of like sucked it up and like put some effort into my characters and built them up, and now it's like chill again because I'm not way behind the difficulty level that my world had reached essentially. So it's really nice that it wasn't this dead end scenario where it's like I didn't do enough in the past and I'm walled. Like I was able to like steer the ship around because I had all this resin. And actually one of the things that's a nice, this wasn't my topic. I didn't mean to talk about Genshin.
I know, I was going to say, we're getting into it.
I mean, we might as well do, like, essentially it's a podcast, right? We just let Jesus take the wheel. But one of the nice things that helps as like a bit of an equalizer is like the co-op as well. So like shout out to my friend Kurt, who you have met. He got on co-op with me and he has like really built characters and everything, and he was able to help sort of carry me through farming some of the domains, they're called, domain challenges I needed to do to get like artifacts and stuff and build up my characters a little better, just because they were not quite good enough to like easily do it. And now I can take on things like that myself, and I'm back to being able to do what I need to do to get what I want to get to continue to advance my characters and like do stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
That always feels good.
And I feel a lot better about the game than I did when I was failing at that one of like timed event and being like, how am I supposed to get my rewards for this if I literally can't do it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was kind of a problem I made myself by just being lazy about the game, but it's actually not that bad.
What you sowed.
Yeah. Spending your daily 160 resin is really not that big of a time requirement compared to like what I was doing before. It's like spend an extra 20 minutes running like 20 to 30 minutes running like domains. Like if a domain costs like 20 to 40 resin to loot, resin is essentially the currency you use that like limits how many times you can like run certain domains or whatever.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So like essentially just
spend
like
a little
sure
bit of extra time.
Honestly, yeah. Exactly.
Makes sense. Tiny bit of more investment, but you like get a lot more out of the game. That makes sense.
If I run something that costs like 40 resin, I only need to do it 4 times.
Cool.
And I've spent it. And just as long as I'm spending on something that can upgrade one of my characters, it just means I'm progressing along with my world level.
You're good to go.
I was just dumb about the game. It's my first like gacha game, so I didn't recognize that if a resource is like daily, like you really should be spending all of it every day. Like, I guess it seems dumb. Like, it makes a lot of sense.
Gotta do those logins.
I thought that was for, like, if I wanted to push, like, really deep into the spiral abyss and, like, do, like, the more challenging stuff like that. And I kind of thought if I just wanted to quest and enjoy the story that I could just do that. But I do have to put a little bit of effort in keeping my characters up. So, lesson learned and back on track and actually having fun with the game again. So, that's good.
Right on. So, that's where we've been, everybody.
That's what I've been doing. Yeah, Genshin and 14.
Well, let's move on to some topics. Let's do it.
Cool. Yeah. I don't know. It's been too long since we last recorded. I have no idea who went first last time.
Yeah, I have a thing. We can here. I'm just going to adjust here. My chair is so squeaky. I can definitely. I got a thing. I can start us off if you want.
You want to go first?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Let's hear it.
So this is spurred on by a recent thing that I have played.
Okay.
You probably might know where this is going. I don't know if you do. I want to talk about demos. Sure. We've never talked about demos.
Yeah, okay. I know what you played.
And,
yeah, we haven't talked about this.
So to put some background here, the Tales of Arise demo recently launched on the 18th, and a couple days ago. And I downloaded it the same day, and I played it. You get about an hour or so. You can play as each of the, I think, 6 main characters of Tales of Arise.
Yeah.
I think
6 is correct.
I only played through it as the first guy, I guess.
You can switch at any time in combat.
I know, but he kind of, like, when I play Tales games, I always play the dude with the sword, and he had a sword, so it kind of worked out.
Got it.
But I had a great time. I thought it played really fun. I know you have some opinions on the looks, but this is not necessarily where I want to go with this. I don't want to get into Tales of Arise too much, although I do want to hear your opinions on it.
Yeah.
I had a good time with it. I thought it was interesting. It's a nice little taster. And what
I think I did a completely different approach to you with that demo.
Okay, fair enough. What I want to talk about is the concept of demos in general, because over the years we've seen a lot of different kinds of demos. So like there used to be classic way back in the day. You get like shareware even, right? Like you get a couple
shareware sort of is the original demo.
Yeah, you get a couple levels. And you got to pay to get more, or in like the PlayStation magazine and stuff like that, you'd get the demo disc that had like, upcoming games. And sometimes they were like...
That was such like a vibe. I remember like there was almost something so cool about a demo disc was like, yes, none of these are full games, but I get to like play so like fun. 6 different things and figure out what I'm going to beg my mom for. I'm speaking from like a perceived alternate reality where I had a PlayStation. I actually didn't growing up, but I did borrow a friend's PlayStation a couple of times, and sometimes in the stack of games was a demo disc, and I did try them.
They're fun. They have like
for example, I think all I know of Legend of Dragoon is from a demo disc.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, okay.
Like up to the first boss, and then it ended.
They have what other kinds of demo discs that we used to have? Occasionally inside of other games. So I have Zone of the Enders, and there's the infamous demo for Metal Gear Solid 2, which is why a lot of people bought Zone of the Enders. And
isn't one of the most infamous ones? Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was FF12 in Dragon Quest VIII.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's.
I think a lot of people. I think a lot of Western gamers got their first taste of Dragon Quest literally because that demo
Final Fantasy 12
sold them. Yeah, they were like, you know what? The game looks all right. It's probably good. It's an RPG. I like RPGs because I like Final Fantasy. I'll buy it because I want to experience the demo. If I don't like the game, I'll trade it in or whatever is probably what they were thinking. And then they just also liked that game. Yeah, I legitimately believe that did a wonder for Dragon Quest in the West.
Then low-key Dragon Quest 8 was like maybe the best Dragon Quest game until 11 came around. Like honestly.
Yeah, but I think even that aside,
right.
I just think that a lot of
totally
Western gamers like hadn't even really put. It's really interesting because Dragon Ball is like hugely successful here. So you would think that people would put 2 and 2 together and be like Toriyama, like it's now an RPG that's got Square Enix publishing it because it, it's really interesting that it kind of needed like an external push that's like gaming related instead of like its own star power. Like it's weird that its own star power like wasn't enough.
I mean, Chrono Trigger is rare for that same reason, but I don't want to get into Chrono Trigger again. I feel like I talk about Chrono Trigger once a week.
Yeah.
So you had that kind of a demo, right? The built-in one, the one that comes with the game, and then you get into the downloadable ones. I always thought those were fun. I like the physical demo discs. I'm doing a quick overview here, and then I want to go back and go into these in your experiences.
I want to express super quickly that for a minute there, it felt like demos kind of vanished, especially starting in like the PS3 360.
This is where I'm going.
Okay, and then into like the PS4 era for a while,
this
and then
is where I'm going.
Eventually they started coming back, and I just want to quickly say I'm so like thankful that demos are coming back, and I don't, it's hard to say because it hasn't been that long since we started seeing them again, but I really do hope they are working well, because I think the major thing is that publishers are like kind of scared of the possibility that it turns customers off from the game, but I also think it can sell a lot of customers who would have been on the fence.
Before you go too much further, because I feel like you're going to touch on the thing I want to talk about, so I want to give you ample time for me to set this up, and then you can launch into this, because I know you're jumping the gun, but yes to all of that, because there was a period where demos weren't really a thing, because they weren't packed in with games anymore, and you didn't always get the trial. There were occasionally trial versions on the online stores, but they weren't always there. However, where I used to play demos all the time was on the 3DS, the eShop. Had demos of games.
The downloadable ones.
And this is when we saw something very fun that I think is my favorite kind of demo, and I'm a little disappointed the Tales of Arise demo is not this. And this was something that you mainly saw for RPGs. But Pokemon, for example, did it a couple of times, or at least once. It was for... what was it for? It was for the Gen 3 remakes. What were they? The Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. The name was on the tip of my tongue. They had this demo where it was a self-contained story in one of the towns from the game that was only on the demo. And you're
different than the events in the game.
Different than the events in the game. You had a little kind of like it wasn't Team Rocket, but it was like you had a little interaction with Team Aqua or Magma. You had a couple Pokemon that you could use. You couldn't catch any, I don't think, but you got into a couple battles. And at the end, once you cleared the demo was only like 30, 40 minutes long. You get a Mega Glalie, I think it was, or the stone that lets you evolve Mega Glalie. Anyways, it was an actual...
And it becomes like a save you can load into the actual game.
Exactly. You can transfer the stuff over. And then I think... so you saw that a couple of times, and then you started seeing it... you see some demo versions on some other consoles, as it went on here and there. But then you get I say infamous, but I think it's actually an awesome opportunity. The Dragon Quest XI demo, which was... in their words, play the first part of the game, and you're like, okay, I'm going to play this for, 30, 40 minutes. I'm going to get flavor.
So long.
It's 10 hours.
And with my
10 hours long.
With my relatively slower pace through the game, it essentially felt like the game just had an earlier release date.
Yep.
Because I didn't play those 10 hours between the demo and the release date. Like, I didn't even finish that.
Yep. It was 10 hours long, and your save data transferred over. You just picked it up from where you were in the story. That's
clarify,
phenomenal.
That might sound weird. To clarify the listener, like, I did finish the game. What I mean is I didn't play to the limit of the demo
in the
time between the demo and the release. Like, when the release came out, I bought the game and I did finish the game, but I wasn't done the section that is included in the demo yet at that time. I transferred my save, but I was earlier than the end limit of the demo. So to me, it effectively felt pretty much like the release date was earlier. That's a damn generous demo. I think in my mind, that's the best demo ever. I really give props to the Pokemon demos for having that same kind of idea. Like, you get a reward for playing early, and also it's completely different. I think Bravely Default has done that too. But now what we see also is demos being used as a way to actually not necessarily sell the game early or in a worrisome way, maybe scare people away, but also as a way to get feedback. Square Enix has been weirdly good about this and has actually made large changes. They did that with Bravely, right?
They
Bravely
did.
Default too?
They did do it to Bravely.
Lots of
Strangers of Paradise.
feedback surveys,
Strangers in Paradise. Yeah. Whatever that game's called. Stranger in Paradise. Final Fantasy USA, the new one that's coming out.
Yeah.
It's Origins. What's it called? Is it Final? No, it's not Origin.
I think it goes in this order. I think it's Stranger in Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin.
That's it. Yeah. So
I could be wrong.
So that game
I'm still only operating on memory here.
Right. So that game had a limited
I didn't look it up.
A limited demo where they wanted feedback, and I think that is awesome. I would like to see a combination maybe where you get like a little bit of the game and your data transfers over. But I guess they can't do that if it's like an early build. Like, I understand why.
Yeah, if it's early enough that feedback is impactful, it's also not it's also too early for like transferable data probably.
So the last aspect I want to talk before we go into the whole demo thing is how the indie space, I think, during the dark years where you didn't see many demos on PS3, Xbox, that kind of stuff, you got the early access and all of that kind of stuff. Not a demo, still playing, sometimes paying for a game, right?
Usually
paying for a game. But you had these but okay, maybe early access is the wrong word. In Steam, there is an open community of kind of like playing a game alongside its development, which is kind of what...
Definitely, it's essentially early access.
You have betas, you have, I feel like the indie team really...
There's a whole early access like label on Steam, and if you're looking at an early access game, you get a banner and everything.
I know, I misspoke. I'm trying to like limit this to stuff that you don't have to pay for. So I guess...
I see.
I'm not talking about early access specifically, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that there's like the PS3 and the Xbox 360 AAA weren't doing demos and trials and all this stuff so much. I feel like there was like beta builds and things of games that people were trying, and you were getting that sort of that kind of interaction with the future consumers, if you will, that the demos kind of used to do. But it had this new angle where you were like also getting feedback. And then I think how that's changed into these kind of demos we see now, where there's maybe like a survey or whatever, or they're looking for feedback on the demo, or they're looking to see what the internet content creators Twitter has to say about the demo after they release it. Not really worried if it's going to scare people away or not, because they're actually looking for criticism to see if they can do something to the game going forward. I think that that's all really neat. So even though you said demos kind of disappeared, I would say they kind of never left on the PC, at least in some form. In spirit, they didn't really ever truly go away.
Definitely in the sense of accessing the game early. I also think that there's sort of a situation where essentially just being on Steam is kind of like there's a 2-hour demo. Now, I don't want to advocate for this too hard, because I have heard that if you abuse it, there can be problems.
You mean
but
like
Steam does have
policy?
a very generous like refund/return policy that sort of makes the risks associated with essentially just buying blind a little less risky, I guess.
So what I want to say then is, taking into account all of this, back to shareware days, you're looking at the pack-in promotional material, you're looking at pack-in games in other games as a way of kind of like Trojan horsing them into your collection. We're looking at I'm looking at, in this case, I guess in this case, the Trojan horse for like Zone of the Enders was the Metal Gear Solid demo, because that's why people were buying it. They weren't buying Zone of the Enders for Zone of the Enders, but then they found out that it's also a pretty good game. You have that, and then you have kind of Steam and its whole community around early play, testing, beta, all the open beta periods, all these kinds of things, and then also now moving into this sort of smaller subset that I really only have experience with in terms of RPGs, but these sorts of segments of
feedback
the game.
Demos.
Yeah, and you get and the content kind of carries over, or
the carryover is so nice.
The carryover is super nice. What do you think is the best demo, though? Because technically the shareware ones kind of had carryover, because you just paid for the extra levels and then you had the rest of the game. It just continued the game.
Here's what I'm going to tell you, and it's a little bit different than the question you're asking, but I'm going to give you a different answer first, which is, I think there's a most important.
Okay, can I add a second part to this? So you're going to... I want to amend my original question just before, so you can amend your answer that's not quite the answer to my question. This is very confusing. What kind of demo do you think is the best demo, and do you think that demos are a good idea in general?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I feel like that's pretty obvious. Yeah, I am also of the opinion of yes. So continue. Sorry.
Obviously, publishers who are risk averse, I can understand from a business perspective why they might be concerned about demos. But if you are concerned about demos, you're not confident in your product. And if you're not confident in your product, you know you've done something wrong, and arguably shouldn't be, and neither should we, the consumer. So like, in a way, I kind of want to say, like, if you're not confident in your product to release a demo, like, tough. Like,
what if it's like a down to the wire
situation?
situation?
That you have to release a demo, but more like it just like, like, especially if you have like a history of releasing demos and you don't, or something like that, it just doesn't bode well. Like it's I don't know.
What if it's a situation like Death Stranding, though, where like that game was better experienced if you kind of went in blind and just had the hype? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's like up to the publisher to do and to decide. And that's honestly fine. Like, it's, if you don't have a demo, it doesn't mean that your game is bad, doomed, that I won't buy it. It doesn't mean any of those things, right? But it's still, in my opinion, like, more consumer friendly to have one. And like, yeah, it might be the case that Death Stranding is like better played like day one with everyone else because of like the world and like constructibles and the way the story kind of like felt like it was kind of a phenomenon. Everyone wanted to know what Kojima's next game would be like and what it would be about, and the trailers had so much mystery in them about all that.
Right.
So like, I kind of get why like playing that game on launch felt important, but the demo need not spoil any of that to be a demo. Like, even if it's just like run around a little bit and just kind of see, I do think the game would sell itself poorly, that game in particular, just because of what its gameplay is like in a demo format. Like, I think a lot of people who went like walking simulator lull would feel really validated, and if that happened before launch instead of at launch, maybe more people would have been hesitant to buy.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think a demo probably would have hurt that game, but I think it would have been less about the sort of simultaneous like first experience with the game situation, more about the way the gameplay doesn't sell itself very well, even though it's completely like actually really appropriate and good for that like game. Like, I actually like the gameplay. I like how it works in that game. It's hard to sell people on that, right?
Yes.
But what I want to say is actually, I think more than anything else, the most important like use case or the most important platform on which to have a demo is PC, primarily just because of like system requirements, different builds, different specs,
very good point,
etc.
Yep.
I think more than anything, a demo for me is like a big part of how I'll know if I even can play a game, right? My PC is starting to show its age. It's still a usable machine. Like there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm running on like a 6 or 7 year old CPU now, and so if a game is particularly CPU bound, I'm in trouble. If it's all GPU, I can get by at my like 1080p 60. I'll be fine.
Right.
But if it's CPU bound, I'm in trouble. And excuse me. And demos are going to be one of the ways I can test that. Now in the PC space, even without demos, benchmark tools have been a common thing for developers to release. It's not the same as a demo because usually you don't get to like play the game. It just like renders scenes and stuff like that. And can still essentially give you performance information, so it's not a bad thing. It's not the same as a demo, but I'm even happy if they release benchmark executables that you can run and see how it performs. It's cool with me too. Not as exciting as a demo.
No, definitely
but like
not.
That utilitarian purpose of like I use the demo to see if it performs. I'm happy with benchmarks for that too. Yeah, I missed demos, and I'm glad to see them coming back.
You see them more and more.
It's a consumer friendly thing. It's just knowing what you're getting into. And like, yes, you can wait till after launch, watch Twitch streams, read reviews. And like, I think you should do all those things anyway. But if there's a demo, it's like unquestionably just install the demo and see for yourself. Like it kind of takes all of the other like argument about like, do you wait to like watch streamers or do you like try to buy it day one or blah, blah, blah. Like all this like argument that goes back and forth about people are like, I want to ride that day one wave versus like, I want to wait for the reviews. It's like, the demo doesn't cost you any of those opportunities. Doesn't cost you the money. It's not a commitment. Like, demo's the way to go. Free trials too for like the
100%
persistent games because you can't really make a demo for like a persistent game, right? So it's essentially for like MMOs and stuff. Like the free trial is kind of the thing.
That is the demo. And I mean, that's what got me into Final Fantasy 14 was the free trial was obscenely good. And
it's ridiculous how generous that trial is.
And I bought into it because, the stuff was on sale, which was convenient because I think it was around Christmas and there was a Steam winter sale. But more than that, I had already played so much and I still had so much to go left in like the trial period. And it just ended up being the stuff that I was locked out of as a trial player became important to me enough that, and the price was right. It was this perfect storm.
You were happy to pull the trigger before the actual end of the demo.
More than happy. And my love for it has only grown since, right? Like it's so, anybody thinking of playing that game, go for the free trial. It's so generous.
It's, did you, as the meme goes, did you know Final Fantasy 14 has a free trial that includes everything up to level 60 and the award-winning Heavensward expansion pack?
It's so
For
much.
some reason,
so
just
much
saying
content.
that there is a trial that includes Heavensward became a meme. And weirdly, because it became a meme, it also did so much good for the game because it got spread around way more than it otherwise would have.
Totally.
It's actually kind of awesome that became a meme. It's so weird because essentially what happened is the players like marketed the game without feeling like shills or coming off as shills because they were also just like memeing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
kind of a perfect storm.
Very much so.
Love that it happened that way.
I don't know what else I wanted to say about demos. I'm playing Tales of Arise. It brought me back to playing those demos when I was a kid and playing the games that were packed in with other games. And it just really reminded me of even playing the demos at the kiosks at the EB Games or at the mall or anything.
That's how I first experienced Super Mario 64.
Exactly. It brought me back and I couldn't stop thinking about it, even though it was just so small. I just went, I have missed this. And then I got thinking about it being like, well, what's the history of this? Which is why I kind of led in with this sort of like
you know
long tale. But
you know what I kind of think about when I think about this is also like from a preservation aspect. I think demos can be really interesting because they can give us a glimpse of what the game looked like at some point in development if like things change between the demo and launch. And I definitely know that groups like the Hidden Palace who you can find if you search that on like Twitter, and you can find links and stuff to their like websites and all that. They go out of their way to try to preserve like demos as well as, I mean, they're a lot more focused on prototypes, which are like if they can find like a dev kit that somebody saved or restored or whatever that has like an earlier version of the game on it. Obviously that's their focus, but in a lot of cases people have like made backups and dumps of demo versions of games, and it's really cool that people keep that stuff because it can also just be a window into like how something changed. Even though it's not really the purpose of the demo from the publisher's side, it's another reason I like them.
Final Fantasy VIII I recently watched a video on Final Fantasy VIII because I do that in my spare time. And its demo that was, I don't remember what it was packed in with, but it had a demo that came out, and it was this section that's the Dalit mission. It's near the start of the game, and the party composition was different than in the final game. And I think some of the like dialogue and stuff, and also enemy names of the boss thing that you encounter there. And it was even down to some choices that were made. So it's a pretty famous thing. It's not really spoilers because it doesn't have major plot implications. We get chased by a giant mechanical spider, and you can kill it if you want to. Just letting you know that if you do what I did and break the game, you can kill it. But I believe in the demo it's not killable. Or if you can't kill it, but you can beat it so bad that you get rewards from it that if you just run away from it like you're supposed to, you won't get. But in the demo, it's invincible, which is an interesting change. So it's kind of these are all small things, but it's fun to see how they, in the final version, they reward you for actually being able to overcome it. Like, it's just like,
we can't know for sure.
It.
I would almost guess that was always the plan, and they just hadn't implemented it yet when they cut the demo.
Could be,
perhaps,
but it's still fun to see that
something like that sounds. Yeah, because stuff like that kind of became a bit of a tradition with a lot of JRPGs, where it's like they give you this thing that seems insurmountable and they allow you to run away, but there's sort of that like, but if you do it,
Demon Wall kind of Final Fantasy 12.
Yeah, exactly, but that's a poor example because it kind of came after that. But I guess all I'm saying is like to support the idea that they probably planned to do that. Like there was already a history in the genre of doing things like that.
Right. So. Oh yeah. Oh definitely. But those kinds of things are always really fun when you do see differences. Or like I said before, like that Pokemon demo that's literally a separate game. It's its own thing. It has nothing. Except for it takes place in the same region, it has nothing to do with what your Pokemon adventure on the upcoming game at that time was going to be, right? It was just a really cool thing that Game Freak did to kind of give you incentive to play the game early, gets you super hyped up for what it looks like, and then, just kind of dovetails very nicely into the actual release date. I still have it on my 3DS. Like, I can still play it. Like, I didn't delete that once it ran out because I just thought this is so cool. Like, I'm going to hold on to this.
Possibly the most famous demo for never deleting it in recent history would have been the PT demo. Literally, playable teaser is why people call it that.
I feel terrible for not even talking about that because you're completely right. That is one of the biggest deals. And in a hilarious yet weird thing, have you heard about this, like, abandoned game that was supposed to have a demo or, like, a real-time event but didn't? And then people looked into the company, and the company has tried to release things in the past and failed or removed them.
Are you talking about something specific, or are you just talking about the phenomenon?
No. You got to look this up. It's this game called Abandoned.
I did hear about that. Yeah, that's going on like right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like people are like finding out.
People are speculating on who these devs really are and like whether they are who they say they are, or whether they're secretly like somebody else.
Well, no, someone looked up the company and apparently it's released things in the past that were bad, and then also has like abandoned, which is a hilarious thing, abandoned, in quotation marks, like projects in the past, and like said they would release a demo, said they'd release a patch, said they would release an update, and like nothing. So if by the time you listen to this, if this has been revealed to be an actual game, whether it's made secretly by Kojima, like people say, or not, you can disregard this. But at the moment, it's kind of falling into the hype that PT came into because it was giving people the same vibes, and that project famously, was removed, delisted. You can't get the demo anymore. The only way you can play that is if you have a console with that on it. It's now become.
I think it's probably been backed up by people who have like soft modded PS4s and stuff. But you would also have to soft mod your PS4 to load, like to side load it on.
To the casual consumer, that game is literally no longer available, and it's kind of a shame because it also got canceled. So the demo's really all we got from that. And that's wild to me, you know? Like that's kind of neat in its own way. I find the concept so interesting. The idea of demos so cool. And I really just wanted to talk about it. I mean, like I said, I kind of tacked a question onto it to give us like something to talk about, somewhere to point the conversation. But really, I just wanted to open up the nostalgia box and talk about demos as a thing, because I personally love them. Like, I've played a bunch for RPGs. Every time an RPG has a demo and it's something that I'm going to buy, I play it. It hypes me up. It doesn't even convince me to buy it. I was already going to buy it. I just play it because I just want to see what it's got to offer. I always have a good time, you know? I don't know if you do the same thing or not. I know you've played the Tales of Arise one, but...
Well, it depends. My approach can be dramatically different depending on what I want to know. So this is the thing with demos. I don't necessarily always treat the demo as something that I like the same way. So like the Dragon Quest demo, like I said, I ended up essentially treating as the game came out early.
To me, that's the gold standard demo. That's such a good idea. If you can get away with it.
Yeah, like within minutes of the start of that demo, I was like, okay, I'll buy the game.
Yep.
And then within a couple hours of it, I was just playing the game, and it didn't really it didn't really affect me essentially as like a demo. Like I didn't I don't feel that I even really experienced it as a demo. But on the other hand, something like Tales of Arise, I wanted to know just a handful of very specific things. So I honestly ran that demo for maybe no more than 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I did not watch any cutscenes or read any of the dialogue. I just went and skip, went and found a combat encounter, did a couple of fights.
Okay.
Looked around a bit. If there's a boss in the demo, I actually don't know. I didn't fight one.
It's just a big monster. It's not... I don't think it's going to be lore important.
Essentially felt that I found out what I came here for.
Sure.
Oh, I looked at the skit system. Like, it offered me a skit, and I was really interested to see the way that they play out, becoming more and more elaborate. That had already began even in Zestiria and Berseria, and particularly had nice skits, but the presentation in Arise is, again, stepped up a little bit, which is nice. Yeah, really, I just wanted to know where's the combat at? What's it feeling like? How does it feel to move around? I think the overworld jump is like weird as hell, but it's felt that way since they allowed a world overworld movement. It feels like, for example, I think that
oh, you mean being able to jump while walking around?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize I could do that. It kind of
reminds me of the Dragon Quest 11. It kind of reminds me of the Dragon Quest 11 jump. Like, it feels really stiff.
Can you jump?
But it doesn't really matter. In Dragon Quest 11, yeah, I think you can.
Man, I played like that game for 85 hours.
I feel like I remember the hero like doing this like really awkward stiff jump where his arms kind of stay too close to his sides.
That makes sense. That sounds...
And it's not very high.
Yeah.
I might be wrong. Okay, I have to concede I might be wrong. I don't remember.
No,
but it doesn't matter. It's not an action game, right? But I just think the animation is weird. And I think likewise Velvet's animations in Berseria, especially just her overworld running animation, is just like really weird looking. Like, I don't know if it's probably not in their budget, but I feel like that game would benefit a lot from like mocap. Well, maybe not mocap, but just like some better, I don't know, like even just mocap the running and you know, have like animators do the rest of the stuff if you need
Arise?
I'm even talking about Arise still, because like this is the funny thing. Like, this has been a thing in Tales for like a long time, that like the out of combat animations have this like stiff sort of appearance.
Yep.
It's serviceable. It's kind of similar to how like FF14's cutscene animation is like really weak compared to what was in the 1.0 version. Like, that's one of the things that was cut back.
Right.
It's kind of along those lines, but in the case of Tales, what's happened is there's now this like huge like apparent budget increase / like fidelity, like reaching like further than what sort of like Berseria and Zestiria and stuff were doing. Like, there's this huge like very apparent visual upgrade, and it's like not accompanied by like, in my opinion, like an animation upgrade to suit. So I think the game looks just a little bit strange. And then as well, there's like I was mentioning a graphical sort of like stylized sort of like look to it that felt a little bit strange to me, but neither of those things, like none of those things really matter ultimately. Like if the game is good, the game is good, and the animations that matter are the combat ones and etc. So like I'm not holding the game to this standard and saying like that it's a bad game, that I'm not interested, blah, 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 or anything based on that demo. It just like, it just felt a little weird. I don't know. I'm probably going to play the game. I'm probably not going to play the game at launch or buy it at launch.
I probably
But
will.
I'm sure that I will get around to that game.
It's really satisfying, something that I didn't know I wanted.
I have several Tales games already on the go, including ones that are like
Me
known
too.
quantities as good games that like I don't feel that I need to like buy the newest one at launch and play that one right away. Like I have a Berseria save that's like 40 hours. Like I've already committed to the game. I've just been lazy about it.
Yep.
Like I really,
Yep.
you know, I think my time would be better served finishing that before starting another Tales game. And like it's ridiculous that I'm a fan of the series and haven't played and finished Symphonia. Like that should probably
That's
just
the
be
only one
higher
I've
priority
finished.
than Arise. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it all is what it is at the end of the day.
So demos, in conclusion, they're great. We love them. There should be more of them. And if you can
I think
give
they're
us,
important.
I think
I'll
they're
even
important.
say.
And if you can give us something for completing them that we can transfer over to our real copy once we do it, all the better. If not, that's fair. I understand. But
Yep. On PC, please, demos.
yeah.
I also meant to say this, and I can't remember if I did, but regarding the thing that I mentioned about like the Steam refund policy, like if you abuse that, you can like lose the privilege. So like, I just want to make sure I don't advocate that people use that too much as just like a demo system, because like I wouldn't want anyone to have heard me say that and then like they just start doing it all the time, and then now they can't refund anymore.
You're
Like
now liable.
you do it few and far between when you're really not sure, or if you like thought you believed in a game and you felt you got burned, don't like buy every game that comes out and refund them, please. Like it's not meant to be used that way. It really is a refund policy, not a demo system. Yeah, but in essence, some people have been able to use it that way occasionally, and yeah,
Just to test out.
cool. Anything else on demos? I think we were kind of wrapping it up there.
Definitely. I apologize if that was a little bit unfocused. I just really got into thinking about demos this week, and I just wanted to have a nice long, meandering chat about
Little
them.
breakdown on them.
Yeah. Demos. Let us know what you think. I think that there should be more of them, and especially if you're, quote, an older gamer. I'm sure you probably have some fond memories of, the kiosks or the discs included in magazines and all of that. And it's just, I want to see more demos. I can play more games. It's like sampling different genres of music before you really dive in. It's just nice to get a little, a taster.
Yeah.
It's like a charcuterie board of video game wonder, if you will.
Speaking of genres,
Is this your topic?
I want to talk about genres in my topic, but I want to talk about something specific, which is
Yep.
basically there's a question. I just want to ask a question and see where the
Hit me.
conversation takes us. The question is, what do you think it takes to save a genre that has like died or is dying or has shrunk?
Okay.
Well, you know what I mean? And so
Sure.
like some of the ones that come to mind to me when I like kind of was thinking about when the idea to talk about this came to mind is like, there are certain genres that you can't necessarily say that they're gone, right? But they're not what they once were.
Sure.
And to me, like two of the biggest ones that immediately come to mind are RTS, and the specifically arena shooter genre, and especially the latter. The latter is really suffering. The former, there are some games kicking around still, like StarCraft 2 is still supported, but it's not really in active development anymore.
Right.
Age of Empires 2 with its like HD and deluxe editions and stuff in recent years has been like resurging massively because the competitive scene has actually really taken off on Twitch, including tournaments like Hidden Cup being broadcast by T90 official on Twitch to like over 20,000 viewers. I think I remember seeing, maybe it was over 30,000, something like that. Some really incredible figure for a game that's like 20 plus years old. And we have games like Age of Empires 4 on the horizon, but like RTS is not really being played as an esport in the way that games like League, Dota, etc. like are. But there was a time when like StarCraft, Brood War, had essentially had. I feel like there was a time when it was essentially the biggest game in esports.
Right.
Like in its very like you know what like in that era when like South Korea was doing esports before anyone else.
Yes.
It was all centered around StarCraft, right? Like the RTS was once dominant in this space, and now it is like something that like if you feel like it's like deep nerd stuff, you know what I mean? It's like,
is it just in that case? Is it barrier to entry? Do MOBAs offer a RTS light experience, but a depth that is all their own? That is more. It's kind of like easy to learn, hard to master, whereas RTSs outright are kind of like hard to learn, hard to master.
Yeah. So in the case of RTS, like I think there's definitely a valid line of thinking. I don't necessarily know that you can conclusively confirm or prove it, but there's definitely like something there to the idea that MOBAs sort of like replaced RTSs for a lot of people.
I mean, in my mind, they look so similar, and the one was born out of Warcraft 3, basically, that I kind of can't not think of it like that.
Yeah, it's like a genre that's literally derivative of it, and a lot of like the mechanics like that existed in MOBAs like are RTS mechanics, right?
Right.
Like for example, if you remember in like Age of Empires and StarCraft, how you could like select a bunch of units and hit like Control 1, and now you have like a recallable group that you can press 1 on your keyboard and you get those back. Like if you play one of the heroes in Dota who can spawn minions or like has various like extra things you can select and control, like you can set up control groups. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that functionality
so like a lot
is still
of
there.
like exactly, the functionality is still in the game, and like even down to like really nitpicky stuff too. Actually, like there's things like a mechanic like attack move, which like in an RTS is like you issue a move command, but because it's attack move, it also means that if your units come across anything hostile, they attack. Like attack move exists separately from move in Dota, and I think also in League of Legends. Although I'm not an expert on either of these games,
right,
to be fair, but I've played thousands of hours more of Dota than League of Legends. I think it's in both. And like attack move has like quirks related to like AI aggro, and like the AI in like Dota are the creeps that run down the lane, which are not controlled by players. But like if you were manipulating AI in an RTS, those are like the scripts of units when they're not directly selected and being controlled. So you would still use mechanics like that to like manipulate, like if you found idle units of your opponent before they start like controlling them, like that's your moment to like, I don't know, do some kind of like manipulation to the AI to like, you know, you used like one of the things is like if you attack move like or attack command like on an enemy unit in Dota, lane creeps that are attacking, if I have this correctly, it's been a couple of years, that are attacking your tower or your creeps will suddenly aggro onto your character instead. So if you want your lane to get pushed out, you want your creeps to not be being attacked by the enemy creeps so that like the attrition is in your favor. You and the opponent is like not present in your lane. You can like issue an attack command on somebody all the way across the map that you can see in one of the other lanes, and then like cancel it, and those enemy creeps are now attacking your character, right? Like that's an RTS mechanic that's just like still in the game. Like,
right.
It gets really, really deep, even into the nitpicky stuff. So in a weird kind of way, like MOBA players are like largely and mostly like still playing RTS mechanics.
Interesting. Okay.
It's just
so how would you revive
unit.
RTS then? Would you just make it simpler?
It's really hard to say. So like what does it take, right? Like do we need like, because here's the thing, I think that people were like kind of happy. There's obviously like criticism, you can go out there and find them. There's like a lot of flaws to like StarCraft 2, for example, but I think there was like a lot of people that really wanted to play that game competitively and did for a long time, but the problem was like the developer support. Like Blizzard kind of dropped the ball on StarCraft 2 and didn't like support the game in like sort of the proper ways to like let it grow and thrive. Blizzard has a bit of a history of like getting a little too hands-on with like an esports scene and then like kind of dropping the ball on it. But the way that they went about it means that like if that dies, it's like that was like sort of the chance in like a grassroots community won't like really form. And if it does, it kind of looks like it's a failed game, and it's like people are just like doing what they can to continue playing it rather than people are excited about the game and have built a scene. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So basically you're saying to revive the RTS thing, we might need a new game that is also good, that people want to do for esports, is set up in a way for esports, and also is continually supported not only by a community but by the developer. Like it almost needs to be like made for this purpose to save it. Like it needs to be geared around this as its life instead of having this multiplayer aspect of a single player game become an esport. It needs to be the focus of the development is to make an RTS for esports. Is there anybody doing this? I'm not in that community, so I don't know.
I'm actually not certain myself either. I there's a few RTS games I have on my radar, but I think one of the problems that's happened in this genre is there's a lot of different slices of what an RTS is.
Sure.
So like, for example, like Total War is like a series that's like ongoing. Like the developer is constantly adding new content to these games and making new Total War games and stuff like that. So like in terms of like always having a fresh game to play, like I can't comment on how well the developer is doing at like balancing the game and things like that.
Right.
But in terms of like there always being something new to play, like I know that franchise is at least moving in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so different. Like Total War like does not and like cannot offer a StarCraft or Age of Empires type of player what they want, even though they're technically both RTS games, because like the things that you do in StarCraft, like the type of micro, the type of like build order doesn't exist in Total War, because instead you spend points on an army, right? And you're just doing a battle. You're not doing like buildings and stuff. So it's just like it's just different. It's not.
What's stopping somebody from just in the same way that you have these battle royales that are all very similar, but like they all got their own little twist on it, or whatever, or you have online shooters that are all sort of similar but all have their own little twist on it. You know, like no one's saying Battlefield is Call of Duty.
I think the twist is the problem.
The what?
I think the twist, the little twist in RTS games has actually kind of been a bit of a problem.
Because I was going to say, what's stopping someone from basically just like ripping off the design language of StarCraft, but like basically skinning it something different and then continuing to support it? Like what's stopping that from taking off?
So I think like one of the things is like there's a few that have come out over the years. Like one of the ones that comes to mind that had a lot of potential maybe would have been like Dawn of War.
Okay.
Which is Warhammer 40K Dawn of War.
Right.
And the original one was very RTS, played a lot like something like Age of Mythology or like StarCraft 2. Not as fast as StarCraft or StarCraft 2, but like, you know, it was like that type of an RTS, right? It had some weird building restrictions that I think is definitely like problematic for building for base building being like a strategic thing you do. Like for example, in Age of Empires, it's really common for players in AoE 2 to like use their houses as like walls,
right? Like,
to build in a particular way. But if I'm remembering correctly, I could be a little bit wrong on this, but if I remember correctly, like you know how in StarCraft you have to put the Vespene gas like harvesting building like on a little like geyser thing.
Yeah.
I think Dawn of War forces you to put a lot more things on like specific points like that instead of like freely.
Okay.
And I think too much of that is like bad because it removes like a certain aspect of like the skill ceiling, which is like how well you like place things in your base can actually like make a significant difference at the high level.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And so like they keep doing things like this. There's sort of a more indie RTS called Northgard, which has like all the same like kind of like control scheme stuff as an RTS, but it has this really weird thing where it's like the map is divided into almost like civilization or like risk like chunks, but you have to like send your units into like some kind of a neutral point in a certain chunk, and like they have to like defeat it for that chunk to like now be able to be captured. So like you can't free build except for like within your chunks that you like own, and eventually you can like make your way to the other players, and there's like a lot of neutral mobs that aren't the enemies, so you're like kind of playing an RTS, but you're also sort of still playing like a grand strat, or not a grand strat, I don't know, like
it sounds like
a Civ or a Risk like strategy game at the same time. It's like they keep trying to mix it with things, they keep trying to like innovate it with new features, and it's like, where can someone just make a really good like AoE / StarCraft style RTS, please?
But it just seems like it seems like the twists they're adding in these cases are actually what's stopping them from becoming esports.
I feel like they're making them more accessible, or like trying to make it unique so that it has like something that it offers that'll like be a selling point. But I think what's happening is, as a result, like these games, I think have a ceiling on how they can grow, because those are actually more divisive than like the formula that's like known to work.
Interesting. Okay, and what was the other genre you discussed that needs reviving?
I mentioned arena shooters.
Right, so give me some examples. We've talked about this in the Boomer Shooter episode, but just, to...
Yeah, we talked a little bit more about like the single player revivals of those. And I think that actually is a great example of one avenue for what does it take to revive a genre. And it's really funny that I just talked about how I wish they were more like the original formula, but that's been the problem to arena shooters. And it's been in some way the solution of at least restoring that vibe. The problem is that so many arena shooters were being made that were like basically Quake 2 or 3 clones.
Yep.
And not really succeeding.
Oversaturated market.
And then like as soon as they were like, well, let's like go back, but do it single player and do it like even more retro and like kind of like play on like nostalgia for something like Doom instead of like trying to offer to like the really skilled Quake players like a new game to like wall noobs in. I guess, is like here's like the single player boomer shooter, and it's not the same thing to the people that want to play a competitive online multiplayer arena shooter, but to all of the people that played a little bit of all these games, it seems like it did the trick, right? So it's weird because the genre didn't necessarily get revived. It's more like a different facet of the genre did. So there's still like a void here, but that's like one path, which is like go in a different direction.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ironic that I say that, right? Because I just said that going in a different direction didn't work for RTSs, but it kind of has worked in a way for like arena shooter adjacent types of games. But the thing is, like, if you want to play like a Quake 3 or like Unreal Tournament kind of shooter, like that's just not out there.
That's true.
Halo is, in my opinion, a hybrid. It has a lot of elements of arena shooters, but its weaponry is not necessarily in line with what an arena shooter typically has.
If I think about the original Halo, like Combat Evolved, that to me is right on the Venn diagram of modern shooter and arena shooter.
100%.
Like playing Blood Gulch over and over and over and over again, like that was that gives me arena shooter vibes like through
even
and
up
through.
Even up until Halo 3, I think there was still a strong argument that it was like very much like a hybrid of that with like the modern shooter. But once you get into like Reach and 4 and onward and you have like perks and stuff like that start to like look like things that we've seen in like Call of Duty, it feels like it's in its slice of being a little bit of both of these things. It's gone a little further away from the things that had in common with the arena shooter, which would have been, by the way, to just kind of like make the argument clear if anyone out there is going like, what do you mean? Like, I don't agree. I'm thinking of things like item, like gun spawn timers and stuff like that. Cause like a big thing in a game like Quake to like beat your opponent is like timing the spawns of all the power-ups and being able to like route through the map in your like kind of just movement cycle to like each of them in turn and like deny your opponent as much as possible. Right. So like people do play Halo like that. And a lot of the best like Halo players, from my understanding, in like the 1, 2, 3 kind of sequence of Halo games were making that a huge part of their gameplay. But Halo also is different because, I think it's weapon variety. Like power weapons and stuff in Halo are obviously very like their arena shooter archetypes, but they're a lot more limited. Mm-hmm. Like a rocket launcher in Halo, you get like a couple of rockets, but in like Quake, it's like in Unreal Tournament, it's like literally just one of your main tools, and you'll typically always have ammo for it, right?
Right.
It's just kind of different, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like that's one of those genres where it's kind of funny because I think that change has helped it. I think that the ways that even Halo changed away from the arena shooter when like Combat Evolved and 1 and 2 and 3 like kind of came along, like those were changes that were successful.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, 100%.
While the rest of the genre was dying in Halo's wake. So it's kind of interesting, right? Like change has perpetuated elements of that genre while like the games that are sort of the core of that genre died. But not necessarily with RTS. It's really hard to say, isn't it? Like,
well, because we
don't have a definitive answer for like what can you do to save a genre.
I feel like with RTS, the thing is that we're looking at a situation where you have these hardcore people who want to play like real-time chess, and there's no opportunity for them to do that and have a continually supported product. So there's like they're looking for something that's, like I said, hard to learn, hard to master, because that's where the enjoyment comes from. But for shooters, it's almost like they became very accessible and very mainstream, and maybe to get people back into the fun of like the old LAN party days, you need to have a shooter that's kind of more accessible, but also is fast and quick. Because like I remember playing Unreal Tournament 2000 on the PlayStation 2. It was like one of the
Yeah.
first PlayStation 2 games. I used to play that with my friend, and we were terrible. But like that game was fun, and it was easy to pick up. Easy to pick up. Low entry point. You just load it up, get into it. And you know what? Even my beloved James Bond Nightfire, I consider that like an arena shooter.
It's kind of an arena shooter.
Yeah.
I think that Unreal Tournament is definitely more accessible than Quake because Quake has people like do this is kind of weird because it sounds like I'm criticizing them, but there's essentially abuses of the movement, momentum, and like physics engines that are like present in like the Quake engines and related games,
right?
That are like a mainstay of like what a Quake like arena shooter is.
Oh,
so you can't really like take that away without pissing all of those people off. But like Unreal Tournament never had that stuff, so like definitely the barrier to entry is different because you don't have to learn that to play Unreal Tournament. You just learn your spawn timers and your guns, and you just go play.
I was gonna say, is it worth mentioning just as an aside that Quake is now on the Nintendo Switch? I think
I didn't know that. I think like Quake 1?
Yeah, I think Night Dive released it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's a new thing, and MVG worked on it.
Oh, that's really cool. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Shout out to MGV, Modern Vintage Gamer. I think we're both pretty big fans of his stuff.
I believe that it's not just on Switch as the night. Yeah, Quake 4K Remaster is now available on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. So you can play it in 4K now if you want. All your hyper-fast, fun Quake memories you can relive.
You know what I feel a bit underserved by is there's a game series called Tribes, which
I remember that.
It's related to arena shooters, though it definitely plays significantly different. I would say that it still has the same sort of vibe of like having a really high skill ceiling and actually a bit of a high skill floor, and generally like being its own like kind of unique gameplay. I think one of the things that sort of like defines the arena shooter, at least the Quake like arena shooter, is like movement, right? So like you have like your strafe jumping and stuff like that in Quake.
Yes.
And so then like in Tribes, they call it skiing, and you have the jetpack. Like every player has a jetpack, and then like you can hold a button that makes you slide on ground instead of like having like friction like running. So you can like keep like the speed that you took by like flying upward and then falling. Cause like, you fall. I mean, real life, terminal velocity. I don't know how it actually works in the game, but you go fast when you fall eventually. And then if you like land on a slope and you're holding your ski button, you have no friction. So you're like sliding, right? And you would have these big outdoor maps, and you essentially like fly up over the ridge, and then you fall down onto the other side of it and like slide down the slope.
Gotcha.
And you build up a lot of speed doing this, and it's primarily a game where you have two bases and play capture the flag type modes. There's other modes, but I know CTF by far was like the more popular way to play that game. And there's been a few iterations over the years, but like most recently there was Tribes Ascend, which was run by Hi-Rez, who are notorious for making extremely questionable business model decisions or like community management type, like just generally in supporting their games. They're known to make like pretty egregious missteps. Like ask any Smite player, like there's definitely been like big controversies in high-res games, and I think a very similar thing ended up happening to Ascend with like their monetization model was I don't remember exactly what the details are, but that as well as just like kind of poor post-release support, and people were like not really vibing with Tribes Ascend, even though it was like it kind of felt like it was the franchise's last chance. Like I don't know who's going to pick up a Tribes game. It feels like the last few weren't that successful, and like maybe anybody who wants to look at that franchise or that type of gameplay would like hesitate. It's really unfortunate when this happens because I feel like every time a game that's sort of an arena shooter or arena shooter adjacent fails, confidence in the genre like drops even more, and like shareholders and investors will like never go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but here's what I think through all of this. Will
Epic canceled development on the more recent UT after they basically just refocused everything on Fortnite and Epic Games Store.
But here's the thing. Gaming trends come and go, right? This is a medium like no other. We know that arena shooters are a thing. So they're in the collective memory, and we have remasters and people keeping the genre alive, maybe in the single player version, or things that are like reminiscent, things that evoke the styles or the, controls of arena shooters. So even though these things are not maybe doing the best right now. I think these genres are great candidates for a renaissance at some point. It's not like we're going to forget about this genre, right? Like, it's kind of like in music. Once a genre is established, there's always people still working in it. You know, is it always popular? Well, that's a different question, but will it go away? I don't think so. You know, like we're going to come back around maybe. Who knows?
I think that another thought I had just in my mind to throw out there was Titanfall and Titanfall 2. Its movement mechanics essentially have some arena shooter-esque elements with like the wall running and stuff like that. The multiplayer of those games, unfortunately, a lot of the feedback I read was that people felt really walled out by it because you would buy the game and play it and people were just so far above you that like you'd never really get anywhere playing multiplayer. You just get wrecked every time. Right. And that also is actually like really echoes like what would happen when a game like Reflex Arena or Warsaw or like any like very Quake-esque game was around. People would be like, you know, people have been playing this type of game for like decades and it's just so hard to like even feel competitive. I think that's one of the issues with like some of these genres when it's a competitive game is like...
So hear me out. So I was saying before that RTSs are hard to learn, hard to master. These kinds of games are more in the easy to learn, hard to master. So here's what I'm saying. What if, and this was a concept that I always thought was a thing, but I guess it's not. What if these games had a very comprehensive single player that you don't have to play before you play multiplayer, but it adequately prepares you for multiplayer?
Especially if it could teach you some of the more advanced techniques.
That's what I mean.
Because like a game like Reflex had a tutorial, I think, but not actually a campaign.
So I mean, like designed with all the tricks that players figure out in mind. You know what I mean? Like imagine if Halo trained you to do some of the like more tricky movements, but they trained you to do that. Like you had to do that in the single player game to like do a part or something.
Yeah. Might work. It's hard to say. Could be a thing though.
It might but then that would make the barrier of entry to just finishing the game difficult. So maybe lock that kind of stuff behind hard mode. Like let people know that like hard mode will prepare. Enjoy the story. Hard mode will you can enjoy the story for what it is while also prepping yourself for the online battlefield. And then all the other modes are kind of like enjoy the story.
More vanilla. Not using advanced,
You know what I mean?
Mechanics. Yeah, I think that actually is not a bad idea. I think that's definitely one way to go to it. Another thing I just want to kind of bring up, because we only talked about two genres that have been dying and suffering that like didn't kind of come out of that, but I sort of just want to mention one that did. And it's a bit presumptuous of me because I'm saying this knowing that even in the time frame that I would say was a bit of a slow period for this genre, there are still like absolute bangers.
Can I take a guess?
But is
it fighting games?
No. Literally like 3D platformers.
Oh.
But even 2D platformers.
Okay.
There was like a time where they kind of were fading into obscurity for a minute there.
Oversaturated market, man. There's so many.
Yeah, it was so saturated for a while. And then I feel like in like 360 era, like there was like a couple, but like they weren't like the hits that they once were. And yeah, like around that time, there was games like Mario Galaxy, which were like critically acclaimed, but you can kind of count on that.
Well, and then on the Sony Xbox side, we got the what I like to call like prestige cinematic titles, which like Uncharted is a platforming game. It's a great game. Is it a good platforming game? I don't know. It's not Mario.
What you want. Yeah, it's not what you want if you're thinking of like N64, PS1 era of like all these like wacky like cartoon character platformers.
But it's got collectibles, right? It's got a goal, and you jump a lot, and you grab onto stuff, and you swing on ropes. Like it is in some ways sort of like this weird successor to the 3D platformer.
Yeah, that's not an unreasonable argument to make. But I just don't think that it serves. Yeah, I don't think that it necessarily serves the same desire, even though it has the same element. Right. Right. Kind of weird.
So now, but now you're saying like what? We got Ukulele: The Possible Lair. It's a fantastic game. We got Donkey Kong Country Returns, Tropical Freeze, also fantastic.
I also just kind of want to say, I think in a big way, indies, were able to be one of the big revivals for a lot of genres, right? Like there's a lot of genres that sort of stopped existing in the AAA space and started and resumed existing in the indie space.
I have a theory on this for platformers, actually. My theory is that when you load up, I dabble. I'm not very good at anything, but but I dabble. When you load up any Unity or anything like that to start off, some of the first things they teach you how to do is make a platformer game. So before you have art, before you have anything, and I'm not saying that this means that platform games are easy. I'm definitely not saying that, but I am saying that I think if it's your first project, you're a new studio,
and you're not really sure what you're gonna make.
I'm saying, yeah, exactly. You can
you're just learning Unity.
You can iterate on the platformer, or if you have a good idea and a love of platformers, and you know what you want to have in a platformer, I think it's very easy for people to execute on their design vision and make an extremely good platformer. Whereas like something meticulous, like balancing narrative, stats, enemy design, all this stuff for like a complicated thing like an RPG or all these other things. Once again, not trying to say that RPGs are more complicated than other games, but I think it's worth saying that some games that are very ambitious and have a lot of systems in place, and
some games are kind of funneled into making as you're learning something like
exactly. And I think that platformers are something where as long as you have a solid movement and jump, you can start iterating very quickly and make something very, like, think of how perfectly succinct like an experience Celeste is as a platformer.
Yeah.
And it's not, once again, that game took time to make. It's made by very competent people. It is phenomenal.
It's ridiculous that it is as good as it is, I feel like.
But it's so tight. It's like, if it was a song, it's like a quick, like 2-minute and 30-second long banger that gets out exactly when it needs to. You know what I mean? It's not bloated. There's not too much going on. All of its systems are in there just enough to do exactly the job they need to do to make that game function. That's a masterclass in design, I think. And I don't think that it's a mistake that platformers are one of the first things that all these things teach you people to do, because I think that I think they're one of the most established, because everybody's played Mario. It's one of the most established things that everybody in their head before even making a game has a concept of what a good one looks like, right? So I think that, coupled with these intros, coupled with people's childhoods, especially the people making games, they're all, you got all ages making games, but I think when the indies were taking off, you had people that were growing up with the Super Nintendo and a lot of these old platformer games. So what did they go to make when they could make a game? They went to make the things that they remember, right? And you get these awesome iterations on a beloved genre that had fallen out of favor with the AAAs. I think that's I do truly think that's why you see so many platformers in the indie. And once again, I'm not trying to underplay how difficult it is to make a game, because I cannot do it. Like, it is very difficult. But like when you see the sort of more like, even going back to the Wii, kind of some like the shovelware-ish games, or shovelware like mobile games, or even in like the eShop now, the games are like $1 or whatever. They all kind of look like stock graphic platformers that somebody kind of slapped together, Like, I think that...
Yeah.
But I love that they're accessible both to make and to play, because I think it's led to this resurgence that you're talking about.
It's definitely one of the paths to reviving the genre, right?
Yeah, there's a well-established design language. It's bundled in with the creation software most of the time, and on top of that, there's a deep love for the platform for people who are of the age that are currently making games that are also commercially available. Like, it's this perfect storm, right? And once again, I gotta underline, I'm not saying platform games are easy to make. I'm just saying that they're both in developing and playing. I believe that there's more accessibility for the average person.
I think that's a good argument. Yeah. So it's interesting because that hasn't translated into success with RTS games or arena shooters.
How would you even make an RTS though? Like, I have no idea where you would start.
I mean, I know of one, but yeah, in terms of the argument of like the accessibility of indie development, no. I just mean like, so that's probably why there's a difference, is the accessibility of making an indie platformer versus the accessibility of making like an indie RTS. I guess all I'm saying is like, it can't just be like indie as like the blanket solution for like reviving a genre, right? Because I think it depends a bit on the genre still.
But currently that's kind of...
Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. But currently that's kind of That's kind of what's happening though. Like the
indies have sort of revived shmups too. Shmups have never been exceedingly popular. I think they had their height of popularity when people were just playing a lot in the arcades, so you just kind of like played what was there. That was sort of like before there were really like good metrics on like what people really want to play.
Yes.
But while the developers like Cave and Treasure and stuff are like still around but not active in the same way that they once were, like there's actually a lot of indie shmups that are on my Steam wish list right now that I've seen through YouTubers such as like the Electric Underground, stuff like that, who goes out of his way to talk about a lot of these games. And a lot of them are some of them are like among the coolest or most innovative or most interesting games in the genre. I won't say best because I know that by like really hardcore shmup fan metrics, a lot of the stuff that's really just not apparent to somebody who would maybe play them casually like me is like what really makes a game good or not. Like the depth of like scoring mechanics and things like that, things that I just really don't understand when I play those games. But but definitely from what I've heard, like the more innovative and like interesting ideas and stuff are all coming into shmups through indies, and that's really cool that that genre is like experiencing that.
Yeah, no, I
and there's been a lot of good like indie RPGs and stuff like that too, or maybe not a lot, but there's been like a few that have actually like pulled it off, right?
Yes,
stuff like Indivisible, which is maybe not as small as like, you know, because that's like the Skullgirls dev. I've heard that that like Virgo versus Zodiac and like Child of Light is sort of like it's Ubisoft, but like it's sort of Ubisoft's like indies division that they like kind of like take small developers under their wing and like publish their games and stuff. So I kind of think it sort of like still counts.
I don't think the RPG at least genre is dying though.
No, yeah. So that's like not a great example, I guess. But I guess all I'm saying is like indies have proven that they are capable of taking on more complicated projects. So maybe it's just a matter of time.
Yes.
I guess that's really what I mean. I think maybe one of the problems, and this sounds like kind of, this might like be insulting to like the Quake fans out there, so I'm sorry, but maybe with like the arena shooter, because like I think one of the things that we've seen happen like over and over again is like the thing that they start with is like the Quake 2 or 3 engine or something like that under the hood, and then just like try to like make a new arena shooter with that being like what's sort of like underneath, and like maybe something just like completely fresh needs to happen. I don't know.
No, that's a good point. I was going to say one of the things that about all these genres that you mentioned is that they all are the indie teams that are making the newer versions of these games in today's, in today's market, are similar in size to the teams that made the original games that everybody remembers. I was thinking when I very offhanded said like I don't think RPGs are dying. Like, can you imagine an indie dev releasing Final Fantasy Remake? No.
Age of Empires 4 is in 2 months.
Yeah, that's soon. But do you know what I mean? Like it's like the scope.
No, making a remake, hell no.
The scope of that is. It's not that there aren't talented people that could do it.
Good demo, by the way.
Yeah. What? Oh yeah.
Good demo, by the way.
the scope of the people that could do that. Sorry, not the scope of the people. My mistake. The scope of that project is so gigantic, and the skill of the people that could do it is definitely in the indie scene. But it like, where's the money? Where's the budget? Where's the ability to take 8 years to make that? You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. There are definitely things that the AAA sphere does very well, literally just because it can throw money at things until they happen.
They're able to fund it, yeah.
Yep.
It's like MMOs. Like there'll literally like never be an indie MMO, and every once in a while you see an MMO on Kickstarter, and you just like shouldn't really believe it. I mean, I think there are exceptions. If I'm not mistaken, Ashes of Creation did crowdfunding. But that's also a game that is backed by somebody who has a lot of money, and I'm getting a little sidetracked, but I'm actually pretty optimistic about that game. He's not like an investor. Like he is like the director and like studio lead, but they're not publicly traded and they don't have investors because he just has money, right? Does that make sense? I can't remember why he has money. The guy's name's Steven something. I don't remember what his history is, but he literally openly talked on like a podcast that like, because their studio like doesn't have investors and like shareholders and stuff like that, they can actually literally just make the game they want to make without like having to like stress over or like meet these like requirements or demands or like changes that are like based on like worries about like profit and being risk averse and stuff like that. Like they can literally just make the game they want to make. And so he's like, from what he's been talking about, he wants to make an MMO that is like kind of old school and sandboxy and like sort of serve that market, because he was like a big like Lineage 2 and like Dark Age of Camelot fan and stuff like that.
So revival like, of old school MMOs. In
a way, I'm like pretty even though that game's in like early alpha and like when you actually look at footage of it, it's like very clearly an in development game. I think that they have like the mileage to like finish their game, polish their game, and whether it's good or not, make the game that they want to make without like shareholder interference. So like I think that bodes like extremely well for that game, and I'm optimistic about it.
So this leads me to my conclusion on this topic, which is that you said we don't want to just rely on the indies to revive these genres, but I think the genres you're talking about reviving are kind of some legacy genres to begin with, and I think the indies are the ones that currently are doing the best. It's kind of like indies take the charge, lead a renaissance of a genre. AAA's cash in on it, right? So if we want to see this, maybe we need to see some indie success first before we see the AAA's take it up again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that could be the case, because I think that definitely AAAs see things happen in the indie space and go, we want to slice of that.
And they just copy it.
I think that happens.
Definitely.
Pardon?
And they just copy it, is what I was saying.
Oh, yeah. Maybe, perhaps, yeah. So, I also think collabs with indies is a really good thing. Things like Cadence of Hyrule, which I have said like 40 times on this podcast, that I love that happened. But
soundtrack rules.
Yeah. I just, there's I have hope for some of these genres. I have hope for like Age of Empires 4.
I think they'll come back for RTS. Again.
I think Microsoft has been kind of riding the ship with people like Phil Spencer in charge of like their like sort of their gaming Xbox Game Studios, like that division and stuff like that, right? Like I'm optimistic that I don't know, we don't know as funny as it sounds to say, like we maybe like Halo Infinite is in limbo, but like they've been running tournaments for like Halo 5. I think like the entire time that game was on the market. They have run PC Master Chief Collection stuff before, I believe. And you know what I mean? So like it definitely looks like they're in like a position where they really want to like support their games better than they really ever have.
Right.
And so if that means that Age of Empires 4 is going to end up being like a well-supported game that could develop a competitive scene, I think that could be a really good thing for the genre going forward, because there's definitely a big vacancy in like having like the esport RTS right now, because that sort of died off. So
for sure,
good luck to Relic and Microsoft Xbox Game Studios on that one. I that game's a part of my childhood. I just want to see it succeed, like the franchise. I mean,
100%. Speaking of games from our childhood,
optimistic.
Should we go to Backlog Land?
Yeah, okay.
Just because it's usually full of things that we didn't play when we were 9.
Things that are old.
Usually. Okay, here we go to Backlog Land.
You know what it is, it's the Backlog.
All right, we're back in Backlog Land. It's been a while. My pick's easy. It's related to my demos. I want to play, or I should finish is a better word, Tales of Vesperia. I said earlier that I have finished Symphonia. I love Symphonia. You and me were co-oping Vesperia, and
we don't have to finish it that way, though.
No, I know. I picked up the definitive version, and I'm almost caught up to where we were. I just haven't kept on going. I pick it up every now and again.
I mentioned this in my own backlog in a prior episode.
Oh, did you?
I did kind of like a triple hit where I was like, I have these like definitive versions of 3 games that I've played and beat before that I loved, which was like FF12, Persona 5 Royal, Vesperia Definitive, and I was saying that I was like having some problems like replaying a game that I've beat one or more times in some of these cases, and seeing them through to the end, even though I love the game so much and want to like finish that like definitive version.
But I haven't even played this game once.
It's hard.
I haven't even played this game once. So like
you've played like half the game once.
Which is kind of the weird problem, because I'm struggling to get through the part that I've already done. But like every time I pick it up, I go, this game's great. Like it's so good. Like I should just finish this. And then
the combat is so good in the end game.
It's so good right now. Honestly, I just really like this game's whole characterization. I like its vibe. The music's good. It's just And then I step away from it for like, just like a little bit, and then I just forget about it again. So I looked to pick that up. I mean, not pick it up, sorry. I have it on the Switch. I have the Xbox 360 version as well, but I have it on the Switch. I will finish it. I might start jamming it again in the next little while just as prep for Arise. My concern, though, is I don't want to get burnt out because I do want to play Arise as it comes out because I feel like I can really sink my teeth into that leading into SMT5 in November. And I really don't want to like finish a Tales game and then be like, oh man, another Tales game, Like I don't know because I have a pretty big appetite for RPGs and I seem to be able to go from like, if I finish Dragon Quest, I don't necessarily want to play Dragon Quest again right away, but like I can pick up Final Fantasy, like so I don't know. I know they're Tales and Tales, but Arise seemed sufficiently different from Vesperia for me. So this is a short backlog entry because, we've already kind of brushed on it before, but I think my pick for this week is definitely Vesperia. I would like to see that game through the end. I think it's great. And then maybe one day I'll get around to playing Abyss on the 3DS because I always think that that's a really strange port and I kind of want to play it. And I own it. This is kind of a twofer. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like this section is light for me this week. I just
it's okay.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to say except for that I've put like 30 hours into this game already, and I really just got to finish it off.
I really want to finish that too. I'm honestly kind of on the same page with you on that one. I can't just I'm not gonna pick that or whatever. But
how dare you? Just copy me.
No. Just because it was on mine in the past. I just want to reiterate that I too need to finish that game.
So what's your game?
No, I've got something on here. I have Dishonored: Death of the Outsider.
Oh, that's
so I finished
DLC, right?
Yeah, it's like a standalone DLC.
Okay.
It really should probably be a Dishonored 2 DLC, but it is a standalone game for whatever reason. In a way, I think it is probably a lot like the Dishonored 1 chapter where you play as the other assassin, the one that in the very beginning of the game. So, okay, it's literally the first thing that happens. I'm not spoiling anything. Kills like the queen.
Right.
What's his name? It's been a little while,
I've
right?
played the first level of that game. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. You know the guy, like he assassinates the
you
queen
get framed,
in front of you and you get blamed for it. Yeah. The Dishonored 1's DLCs, you actually play as that guy. And so this Death of the Outsider, realistically, kind of is like a standalone DLC to Dishonored 2. You play as like Billy Lurk, who is like he was one of that guy's like cronies, or she was one of that guy's cronies, but she's she like helps you in Dishonored 2. She's like, yeah, it's interesting. She's an interesting character in Dishonored 2, and she's an interesting character in Death of the Outsider, from my understanding. And from what I've heard, because like in Dishonored 1 and 2, the Outsider is really like he grants you your powers and he kind of observes and comments on you and stuff, but like you don't know really anything about him or the Void or where all the powers come from or anything like that. And so my understanding is that Death of the Outsider like really answers like so many of the questions of where like sort of the paranormal and like weird powers and like the Void and all that, all the world building stuff that is like supernatural in Dishonored, kind of like you get answers to that in this DLC. And it's like awesome. Crazy that I'm such a big fan of the franchise and never played this.
The world building's so cool.
It's incredibly good in that game. And it's ridiculous that, I've been really neglecting realistically myself as a fan of this game, this franchise, by not playing this one, because I think that in a way it feels like it could be like a bit of like wrapping up the franchise with a bow. Like I don't know if they're going to make more Dishonored games or not. Maybe they will, but like if they never do, like
this would be
this could have been a way to go out, and it's like I should really just play it. Like what am I doing?
Man, those games.
I also want to mention. Sorry.
I was just going to say, those games to me are in the same category as Death Stranding, where they, for whatever reason, stress me out as a person. And and it sucks because I really want to play them, but knowing that there's a right way to play them to get the best ending makes it difficult for me to actually play them. Because I want to play them perfectly and like not get caught and not get seen and all that stuff, which is definitely doable, but I feel like I got to just go into those games with this sort of like, okay, if you want to do a perfect run, do it later. That first run, just try your best.
Yeah, so it's complicated. I wouldn't necessarily agree that is a best ending, even though it's probably like the most satisfying ending if you like want like a happy ending for like any of these games to like do like non-lethal or whatever. But at the same time, like the way that the game is built and the way that like the character points and all this stuff is set up, like that's really like only an option, right? Because like if you try to play that type of gameplay, the way that you end up building your character is like one specific way, and there's still like 2/3 of the other remaining options
Right.
that are like relatively untapped. So like the game, I think, definitely wants you to play the way that you feel like, because it's designed to have so many like different objectives. Like I can't remember, like one of the targets I think in Dishonored 1, I remember you can like find his like secrets in his like diary and like broadcast them, and in that way you neutralize the target because you've like basically embarrassed him out of his like position, is like the non-lethal way, and that's like so funny and cool and everything. But like there's also like nothing wrong with killing him, and like I think that even the chaos endings are still good endings. They're not like the good ending, so to speak, but like I think they're still
They're
like
good
a satisfying
written
ending.
endings.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't necessarily
Well-written.
think yeah, because I think a lot of games give you a relatively unsatisfying ending for not doing like
Yes, this was my concern.
the one particular way, and I don't personally feel that Dishonored falls into that trap too badly, with maybe the only one little exception being that it kind of feels a little bit implied that your Dishonored 1 good ending might be the ending Dishonored 2 is based on.
Right.
However,
You can just pick it up and watch it online.
do you know anything about the Dishonored 1
Nope,
ending?
don't tell me. Keep it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
Sure.
We can leave. We can leave this.
with-
we can leave this at that for now.
Well, I can think I can safely say, without spoiling too much, if you play Dishonored 1 and 2 in a similar way, like very chaotic or very not chaotic, the continuity will like make sense. The only way it feels maybe weird is if you play one of them super chaotic and one of them stealthy,
It'll be
or
a
vice
little bit-
versa.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If you do it the same way in both games, I think the continuity will make total sense, actually.
Okay. That makes sense.
So yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with playing Dishonored, and like if you want to square up and fight, you can do it. I think it's actually harder, to be honest.
Fight your way all the time.
I think straight up fighting is very difficult in Dishonored, unless you, well, it's hard to say because I've always built somewhere in the middle where it's like I try to be stealthy, but I'm not afraid to fight if I have to. But like if I've ever gotten like swarmed, I usually die. But I've never built like totally bombastic straight up fighters. So like if you build that way, it's not that hard. But for me, it's always been hard. So I always play like a hybrid of the two where I'm willing to fight if I have to, but hopefully it's not like the whole like
Game. Yeah.
room worth of people or whatever.
Sure.
I don't know.
So that's your pick.
Yeah, Dishonored, Death of the Outsider. Yeah. Also, just want to quickly say too, while we're talking about Arcane Studios, their reboot of Prey, while nothing like the original Prey, I've heard is also really good.
Yes.
But I'm a little freaked out that it might be too horror for me, so it's hard to say.
We'll think about that one.
Heard that it's incredibly good, so I kind of want to backlog it too because I'm at this point basically just a fan of that studio. But yeah, I don't know, little sketched out that it might scare the crap out of me. But
Fair enough.
yeah.
But we'll leave that one for another week. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, so as always, actually, I just want to say this too, because we talked about like arena shooters, and not necessarily that you're going to find arena shooters if you go look at this, but on Steam, there seems to be a QuakeCon sale.
Yes.
QuakeCon being like the essentially like, it was sort of a Quake and like PC gaming convention that now it's essentially just a Bethesda sale, right? But like, looks like there's a lot of stuff here, like the Doom 2016 and Eternal, Dishonored, Death of the Outsider, all that stuff, Fallout, Prey, all these games, basically anything under the Bethesda banner seems to be on fairly generous sales. I'm seeing some 70-80% on some of these. Doom Eternal for 75% off, not $20 Canadian. Like,
Do it up.
I'm not normally the type to just be like, hey, there's a sale going on, advertise like on this podcast, but just because I think we talked about stuff that's adjacent to a lot
Yep.
of this,
Definitely.
worth throwing that out there. Anyway, as for us, you can find us on Twitter at TPCC_podcast.
We've been
You can
away,
find
but
me
we'll be back.
personally. Yeah. You can find me personally on Twitter at TPCC_Hafoko. I don't believe have a Twitter that's like specifically related to gaming or the podcast.
Or one
right?
at all. But
Okay, or one at all. Sorry, yeah. And YouTube at This Podcast Cannot Continue. Twitch at This Podcast Cannot Continue, but all like one word on Twitch, where we broadcast Snester Days. And that does end up on YouTube as well. Podcast episodes end up on YouTube. Also, if you listen to it like audio specifically, Spotify, Apple Podcasts or Apple Music, Audible, and like all the other relevant like podcast streaming services, you can find us on all of those.
Yep.
Always, if you have anything you want to comment about any of these topics, kind of jump in, give your 2 cents or whatever, feel free to
hit us up.
Contact us on any of these platforms so you can find us, whether it's social, like YouTube comments. We'll get notifications, tweets, anything. Reach out. We're always happy to hear from you guys if there's anything you want to share. And yeah, I don't know. Anything else?
No, just thanks for listening, everybody. We got 20th episode next. That's going to be another special one. So stay tuned. It'll be a surprise. But for now, this podcast cannot continue.